Hello and welcome to In Conversation, the podcast where we explore the ideas, practices, and people shaping the future of academic publishing and the arts. In this episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by eminent artist and founder of the Franklin Furnace Archive Inc., Martha Wilson. Martha, welcome to the podcast. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have you on as a guest. How you doing?
James, I'm doing fine.
Wonderful. Where are you calling in from today?
Brooklyn. All the cool kids live in Brooklyn now.
That's right. I mean, I left a few years ago, so I'm sure it's gone up. I'm sure it's gone up since I've left. But you know, Brooklyn, that's a good place to start because, of course, Brooklyn is the home of many, many infamous, famous, wonderful artists over various generations.
Yes.
One of whom, of course, being yourself. So I wanted to just ask to begin with. So, you know, why art, and why did you become an artist? What drove you down that path?
What drove me down that path? The Vietnam War.
Okay.
You want to know the answer? I was raised a Quaker. Quakers are pacifists.
Yeah.
I went to Wilmington College in Ohio, graduating in 1969. My boyfriend did not want to be drafted into the United States Army. He wanted to study printmaking instead. And our painting teacher had been hired away by the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. He called my boyfriend on the phone and said, "Look, this is the coolest art school in North America because they're bringing all the conceptual artists through the school as visiting art. They've turned over 2 salary lines to their visiting artist program. So they have Vito Acconci, Joseph Kossuth, Joseph Boyce,
Wow.
Peter Kabelka, Lawrence Weiner, Dan Graham. The list goes on and on. Anyway, so Richards applied, and I applied to grad school across the street in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Dalhousie University. And I got a fellowship, and he got a fellowship, and we moved to Canada in 1969. Now, the art school was a place where conceptual art was being not exactly invented, but certainly engaged with
Right.
on a truly serious level. And I, Martha Wilson, across the street at Dalhousie University, was studying what? English literature? I was studying words.
Hey,
So
me and you
found
both.
out that words could comprise art. I thought, oh, hallelujah, I can be an artist. I'd been an art minor in college, and I wanted to be able to survive, so I didn't think I could survive as an artist after college, and became an English lit major. And anyway, I started making art out of language. And my big inspiration in college had been Tristram Shandy, which is it's an artist book basically, but it was published in 1753 or something, by Lawrence Sterne, which I read in my English lit class, and I thought, oh, if English literature can do this, then we can do this too.
Oh, wonderful. Now, don't you have a bit of a diary extract there or something?
Oh, yes. So
I'd love to hear that.
I was hanging out. So I was still in the English literature program, but hanging out at the art college because the kids at the art college were way cooler than the kids in the English program. And some years went by, and then my boyfriend, my beautiful artist boyfriend, dumped my ass. At which point, I had to decide what I wanted to do with my life and my career. So here's a diary entry from 1974. I'm drafting my own blueprint. I'm writing my way out of this well. I am writing to discover an answer. I am creating my resources out of an absence that I feel is the real me. All of my values have been contributed from the outside, from my parents, my lovers. How do I know what I like, what I don't like? So I didn't know who I was, but I am a woman. So I was making work using my female body, even though my art teacher my painting teacher in college, who became a teacher at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, when I told him I wanted to be an artist, he said, "Women don't make it in the art world."
Well, I love that diary extract. Thank you for sharing. Almost a manifesto or a provocation.
Manifesto, exactly.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure everyone loved hearing that. Let me ask you a bit of a question then about those early days. So you began making performance art or photo-based works in the early 1970s. Can you take us back to those early days and what first drew you to self-representation, which I guess you just alluded to a little bit, and like persona, and this notion as persona, these kind of tools for critique almost. But yeah, can you tell us a bit about self-representation and persona in those early works of yours?
Okay, so in 1974, I did a work called A Portfolio of Models. And it's 6 images and 6 texts with a single text that unites the whole thing. These are the models that are held out to women. We can be a goddess and look perfect all the time. We can be a housewife and raise kids. We can be a secretary and work in an office. We can be a professional and maybe run the office. We can be an earth mother and reject the commercial system altogether, or we can be a lesbian and just be an outcast. And I did this work, and my partner has it hanging on his wall in his apartment in Brooklyn. My son went to college, brought his girlfriend home. She read A Portfolio of Models. She read all the texts, and she said, "It's still like that." Okay. Basically, women are given possible roles that they're allowed to fill. They're not supposed to stand out or excel or God preserve us, be Black or something, be something that is socially second rate or so. Then, how are you supposed to succeed?
Okay. And you've described yourself as a feminist before feminism.
Only because I did not know the term. I knew I was a woman and I was using my woman's body as my medium, but not until Lucy Lepard was invited to come to the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. She looked at all my work. She said, "Yes, you are an artist. And there are other women artists around North America and Europe who are doing feminist practice." She used the term feminist. I'd never even heard the term. It was not discussed at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. And then she put me at a show, which was really important because through the catalog to the show, I met other women artists who were living in New York. So when my boyfriend dumped my ass, I thought, fine, I'll move to New York and find out if I really am an artist or not.
Was there much international interaction going on at the school?
Definitely, okay. At the art school. But you have to understand the art world was white and male.
Yeah.
Period. Okay, so Casper Koenig, who is running the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design Press, invited Yvonne Rayner and Simone Forti to do books with the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design Press. So I knew there were women out there who were successful, but they were very few. They were not invited to the school.
And what about your own lived experience as a woman? Did that affect a lot of that early work that you started to create?
Absolutely, absolutely. You are assumed to be second rate somehow as a female. We can see it in Trumpism now, where the people who get fired are Black or female.
or in any kind of antithesis to the regime, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, and this is a bit of a difficult one to ask, I suppose, but out of the the sort of early works, the formative works, are there any that still stand out to you? Are there any that you're really, really proud of, or that you would like to share with people, that you'd want people to keep looking at?
Yes. One of them is called "I Make Up the Image of My Perfection. I Make Up the Image of My Deformity." And what it is a picture of me standing in front of my friend Alan Comfort's white refrigerator because we couldn't find any other white wall space in his apartment. And I use makeup to look as beautiful as I possibly can. And then I use makeup to deform myself in, in all the ways I fear the most. And I think that's still a valid fear that women carry with them at all times.
And do you think that your work is the way that people interpret it, let's say, has evolved over time? Or do you think a modern audience would look at some of those pieces from the 70s and beyond and take something away from it that's different now? Or do you think they've retained their original meaning?
I was hoping that my son's girlfriend would say that it's different now, but she said it's
shouldn't laugh really, but yeah, I mean, well, at least it's still inspiring, I suppose.
Okay, thank you.
That's the important thing, I guess. Well, let's start talking a little bit about you some of the other aspects of your career as well,
okay.
Because you've obviously been a very influential and successful artist, and thank you for framing that in the context of the 70s and art schools and feminism. I think it's really important to understand the kind of world you were coming out of as a creative. But you've maintained an art practice while also leading an institution for decades. How have you managed to sustain both without one overshadowing the other? Because it seems that your work with Franklin Furnace and other institutions has added, has been so strong, but it hasn't really overshadowed your artistic career and vice versa. So how have you managed to maintain this work as an administrator and a creative? It's an interesting to me that most people don't manage to deal with.
Thank you for asking that question. When I started an organization, I started working when my eyes opened and stopped working when my eyes closed. And a couple of years in, I thought I'm going to die. So I moved to Brooklyn, so that at least there would be some kind of separation between work and home. And the other thing I did was I started Franklin Furnace in 1976, and in 1982 started an all-girl band of women artists who couldn't play any instruments called this band, because you have to understand, performance, you don't have to have a studio. You don't have to store your paintings or your sculpture. It goes away. You can record it and then you have a videotape, but it goes into the ephemeral after you're done. And around this time in New York, everybody was in three bands because the no wave music scene was in force. So Robert Longo was in a band, and Barbara S. was in her boyfriend's band, Glenn Branca, and then she started her own band called Y Pants. Everybody was in three bands, and so I started a band too of conceptually strong women who couldn't play any instruments. So Disband existed for 4 years, 82 to 85, and then we disbanded, but we did produce a CD.
Okay. Did you feel like the music and art worlds were one and the same almost back in that? In the 70s.
Yeah. Everybody was doing everything, and you have to understand, Franklin Furnace was founded to accommodate works of art that were unsaleable. Why? Because they were too cheap. Artist books, temporary installation. What the hell happens? At the end of the temporary installation, you take it all down. All you have is the slides. And performance, which again, you do the performance and then boom, it's over, and it doesn't exist anymore unless you have recorded it.
Let me stop you there for a second, and just for any of our listeners who might not be familiar with Franklin Furnace and the work and the preservation and the things that it does, could you just tell us a little bit more? Because that you've mentioned ephemeral, and I think that's very important.
So we didn't have enough money to record everything on video in the early days. Portapacks had been invented. We got money occasionally from the Media Bureau to record actually the famous artists. But our job was to show emerging artists who didn't have household name recognition. And we got money for our programs from a foundation that wanted to support emerging artists. It had been founded by an artist in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And it's Jerome Foundation. They still support us today so that we can support art in its emerging moments before it is widely accepted, before it gets commercially available. So we've been doing this for almost 50 years. Next year, we're turning 50 years old. But we've added, my friend Jackie Apple, whom I met through the catalog that Lucy Lepard put me in, was the first curator of Franklin Furnace. Now, Jackie, she was a New Yorker. She knew artists, and she invited Jenny Holzer to do a window called Truisms. She was the first curator, and then she moved to Los Angeles in 1980. She moved to Los Angeles, and we didn't have a curator anymore. And I was the director. I was raising the money. I didn't want to also be the curator. So we installed a peer review panel system where we would ask artists to pick other artists' proposals. We still use this today. And what's interesting about it is I've seen this happen over and over. Artists in Africa and Iowa are thinking about the same things.
Right.
How does that happen?
Beauty and truth and all of that, I suppose.
No, well, issues are important to art, important to people, and the work evolves and changes. The practice changes in relation to what it is that artists choose to deal with in their work.
I should just mention that Jackie Apple, I always forget that connection. We did a retrospective book with Jackie Apple.
Did you?
Yeah, a few years back now, and it was a wonderful project.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I do urge people
she moved to California, and then she did all this work. Plus, she was, an activist artist. She was meeting other people and putting them together. And
well, if anyone wants to find out a bit more about the work that Jackie Apple did, then yeah, just search for that on our website, and the book will come up, and you can take a look at that. Now, of course, over the decades, Franklin Furnace has evolved from a physical location, like an archive in Tribeca, to a virtual institution, effectively. Yes. What drove those transitions, and how do you navigate that? Was that something? I hope you had a few people to help you with that process.
Well, the story now involves the culture wars of the 1980s and the 1990s. We were doing contemporary art practice. One of the artists we showed was Karen Finley, for example. Holly Hughes, John Fleck, artists who were presenting their work all over the country and who had applied for and succeeded in getting grants from the National Endowment for the Arts. But then Ronald Reagan was elected. He wanted to kill off the National Endowment for the Arts. He didn't want to hear the critiques coming in from these hairy artists all over the country. So our peer review panel selected a show called Carnival Knowledge that was organized by a collective of 9 women artists and activists. And they asked the question, can there be such a thing as feminist pornography? In other words, pornography which doesn't denigrate women and children. And then they invited artists to submit work for their show. And there must have been 200 artists in this exhibition, and they all had 10 friends, and they all came to the opening. The traffic couldn't move down Franklin Street. But the religious right, a group called the Morality Action Committee, found out about our show and came to the
I bet they're a lot of fun.
And then they claimed that then the show closed.
Yeah.
And then they wrote postcards to all their congressmen and state representatives and claiming that Franklin Furness had shown pornography to 500 children per day.
Right.
And all I had was the slides of the show. You know what I mean? It was very smart of them. So the National Endowment for the Arts, Benny Andrews was the director of the visual arts program at the time, and Hugh Southern was the deputy director. Came to New York and met with us, and met with some members of my board of directors. They eventually changed the policies of the program such that you had to project what you were doing for the next 2 years and hire a curator to select your programs. They didn't really want artists to be speaking directly to the public anymore. So the culture wars raged for 15, almost 20 years, between 1985 and 1990 something. The NEA 4 case was fought by went to the Supreme Court. It went through a bunch of lower courts, and then it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court decided that the artists had to abide by what are called community standards of decency, whatever the hell that is.
Well, I was going to say that's kind of funny because that that sounds very much like the language being used in this current moment, which you would agree we're very much back in a mode of culture war.
Yes.
And again, it sounds like the language used by the censors on different platforms, let's say, that this goes against our community standards, but who's setting those standards these days, I suppose? Just a quick.
Is this the only community that's allowed to speak, basically?
Yeah, and well, let me ask you a kind of more of a positive question, perhaps, because you've obviously been through this culture war previously, and it seems very similar in many ways. Technology and all these things notwithstanding, we're in a different period of history, of course, and different things are at people's disposal. But do you have a message for artists who are currently working? Anything positive to take away from your own experiences on the front lines of the culture war?
Yes. Franklin Furness is turning 50 next year, as I mentioned. I'm writing a book. I've commissioned essays by other arts-based directors all over the country because the culture wars were not confined to New York City. They were happening, High Performance Magazine in LA, National Association of Artists Organizations in Washington, DC, other organizations and groups around the country were fighting this fight. And we, at the end of 20 years on Franklin Street, decided that the next free zone was not going to be real time and space. It was going to be the internet. So we partnered with pseudo.com, which was trying to create TV on the internet at a very early point. That, in those days, the image was 2 inches by 2 inches and jerky.
Yeah.
So Irina Danilova, who's a Russian, actually Ukrainian artist, I should say, partnered with an American artist to pretend to be on a moonwalk because, the images, they're astronauts in space and their image is jerky. I thought that was a brilliant way to use the new technology, get the word out, but still exploit the fact that the technology was very bumpy in the early days.
But would you basically say embrace, whatever you have at your disposal and keep doing what you're doing in the face of, these challenges? It's nothing new in a sense.
So here's another trick. So we were in a loft in Tribeca. Tribeca was getting to be valuable. The uptown boys wanted to settle downtown near Wall Street. So we sold our loft for real money, and we got an advancement grant from the National Endowment for the Arts of $100,000. Of course, the religious right claimed that we were spending $100,000 on showing pornography to children. But we thought, okay, we're going to continue to show what emerging artists want to say, but now we're going to have a cash reserve in case we get in trouble again. We'll have some resources.
Okay, yeah. So lawyer up in a sense.
Lawyer up, exactly. Lawyer up.
Gold.
Yeah.
You know, play the game in a sense as well as being creative. Well, look, let me move on to a different topic, because it's been wonderful working with you recently, and it's great to have you on the podcast as a result of that. But of course, you've contributed to one of our recent smash hits, Last Artist Standing, which is from the Living and Sustaining a Creative Life series, which is edited by Sharon Louden. So yeah, wonderful book and a wonderful trilogy, really important interviews with different working artists on different topics. And of course, this one looks at artists over the age of 50 and how they can live and sustain a creative life. So I wanted to ask, in your chapter from Last Artist Standing, you reflect on sustaining a creative life over the age of 50. What made you want to contribute to this book, and how was that experience?
All of these essays are about that question. How did you decide to become an artist, and how did you sustain your career once you made the move? And I think they all boil down to determination to continue, because this is what we are on the planet. We are artists who stand, we're not fully accepted by the academic world nor by the political world. We're outsiders, professionally outsiders, and we want to be critiquing from the outside and not be participating perhaps in, I don't know, the political, we can be activists, but we're not running for office. Some of us have run for office, though. Murray Hill has run to be mayor of New York City.
But for the most part, artists remain on the outside.
Critiquing the system.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this as well. Like, what in your own life as an artist, and an administrator, of course, of one of these vital, institutions, what were some of the biggest shifts in your creative life post 50, and how did they challenge, how did they challenge or maybe reinvigorate your own practice?
So back in Nova Scotia, I was creating photographic work with text, and I moved to New York, put it all under my bed, and I didn't have the time and the resources to create visual art anymore. I was doing performance art, basically. And years go by, and then one day, Mitchell August, who was running a gallery on 25th Street in Chelsea, did a show called The F Word. It was all the feminist artists, except for me, were in this show. Judy Bernstein, Joan Semmel, I can't, Alison Saar, I can't remember who all was in it, but so I started stalking Mitchell, and he said he had seen a work of mine in a show at the Guildhall Museum, and did I have any other work? I said, yeah. I took it all out from under the bed, put it all over the bed. He came to my house, and he said, okay, I want to show this, basically everything that was on the bed. So I had my first solo show in New York in 2008.
Okay.
So the punchline of this story is that you may not make it immediately when you enter the art world. You might have to spend some years
in the wilderness. Well, that's a really important point, and I think that's one that Sharon has really tried to get across, through this book and through the different artists and people that she's interviewed and has, sort of asked to take part in the project. And that, you might not get that success till after you're 50, and to keep plugging away. With that in mind, is there any advice that you would give artists of any age about building a creative life that's not only productive, but also kind of sustainable and meaningful?
Get a job.
Get a job. Okay.
I started Franklin Furnace in part, honestly, because I knew my career was not going to support me and I needed a job.
Yeah.
And I tried waitressing, and that was a horrible idea. I lasted 1 week and then I got fired, basically. So I started an organization to have employment that I thought was useful and would pay me not very much in the beginning, but eventually I got paid. And now Franklin Furnace is, it's a real organization with real employees, and they get W-2s and everything.
Yeah, they're not in the wilderness anymore. No, I think that's a really good point. And again, I think when I had Sharon on to do the podcast as well, where she was talking about the book when it first came out, one of the big bits of advice that she said to emerging and younger artists was real estate. If you can get yourself some kind of asset that you can leverage, that you've got, and again, like investing in your own well-being, especially for later in life, because maybe you don't have a W-2 job and you need somewhere making sure that you're getting that 401k, that pension, some kind of sustainability in older age. And I think what you're saying as well is, like, have a side hustle or set up. It doesn't have to be, like you say, waitressing or something that is adverse to what your creativity engages with. Like you're a great example. By setting up Franklin Furnace, you've created opportunities for many other artists and creatives to have a more sustainable life and practice. So I think if you can, that's a wonderful thing to do, and it should be applauded. And obviously I think with the 50th anniversary coming up next year, we'll, not only Intellect, but many other people will be applauding you and Franklin Furnace for the work it has done, continues to do, which is vital. And of course, this interview with you and the work that we've done recently isn't the first time that Intellect has focused on Franklin Furnace. So I'd like to talk briefly now. We can flash that book up on the screen in a minute. But basically, we published a book with Tony Sant looking at Franklin Furnace, and in the book, Tony describes Franklin Furnace as a history of the future. How did it feel to see an organization that you created, your vision, interpreted in such a way? And did anything in his account surprise you, or were you very much involved in research? Because I know Tony's, goes at it with the research.
He interviewed me a lot for the book, and we taught together at NYU, so we knew each other pretty well. The history of the future, though, I have to give credit to Galinsky. Galinsky was the artist running the performance channel at pseudo.com. And he was, he believed that performance art, he was doing it himself anyway, was important. And so he convinced Pseudo to have a whole channel devoted to performance.
Okay. And
we were netcasting. They called it netcasting. And then people were chatting afterwards to comment on the performances that they had just seen. This was, like I said, it was a very bumpy stage of virtual life. But now that we all have phones in our pants pockets, the world has arrived that we were predicting, or rather, Galinsky and pseudo.com was creating in those early years, 1997, 98, 99, 2000.
I should just reiterate the title of the book, which is by Tony Sant, and it's called Franklin Furnace and the Spirit of the Avant-Garde, which I think is a wonderful title. So big shouts to Tony Sant. I really love the book and love working with him always. But let me just ask you another question about the book. So, Sant in the volume positions Franklin Furnace as a key site for the avant-garde, but especially in relation to performance and time-based art, which I think is something you've alluded to already. So in your view, what would you say has been the most radical aspect of Franklin Furness's mission? Because I know Tony highlights a few things, but yeah, what would you say has been what was the most radical sort of demarcation or
I think the mission statement includes the phrase politically unpopular. We don't shy away from showing what it is that artists are talking about and doing their work about, including stuff that can be politically unpopular, because we believe in freedom of expression. And so artists were talking about AIDS, the AIDS crisis, for example. It was real life. It was really happening. And so artists are going to talk about that. Sexuality we share sexuality as a phenomenon, a trait. Why can't we talk about sexuality? And Carnival Knowledge also got in trouble because real porn stars were invited to present themselves to the public. Annie Sprinkle made the transition from being a porn star into becoming a performance artist at that event called Deep Inside Porn Stars.
Great name. I feel like also one of the things the book really highlights is Franklin Furness's resilience in the face of political, financial, and technological change. And having spoken with you today, I think you've raised a lot of those things as well, transitioning from a physical space to a digital archive, working with work and artists that kind of resist preservation, resist being sold, being valued in that traditional sense. Obviously technology in many ways and iterations, but also, selling the physical property and pursuing different financial opportunities to ensure the preservation in the face of maybe political issues and unrest. And I can see how that, again, all of these things aligns very much with what Sharon's trying to do with the Last Artist Standing and the Living and Sustaining a Creative Life book series. So I can see why it was so important for her to have you involved in that project too. So yeah, really, really excited to celebrate the 50th anniversary next year. And I'd urge people to take a look at Franklin Furness and the Spirit of the Avant-Garde by Into That Books, book by Tony San, and of course with Martha at the helm in terms of research and as someone that Tony definitely did a lot of work with. And again, definitely check out Last Artist Standing and the Living and Sustaining Creative Life series if you're interested in aging artists or any kind of like how you live as an artist, especially in a world like we're living in currently, where there's a lot of challenges that you face as a creative person. But we've talked a lot about quite a lot of serious things today. So I did want to just end the podcast, on a few quick time questions. Like we've got to know a little bit about you, as an administrator, as a leader, as a creative, as an artist, a feminist, and various things. But I'd like to just peel back the layers a little bit more with a few lighthearted questions. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a few of these, and if just give me the answers as they come to mind. So to begin with, I just would wonder if you would name us a few artists who have or continue to inspire you, and they can be from any period or any kind of form.
I thought about that, and I think what I'm going to do is just show you my house.
Okay.
This is a work by Robin Toos. This is Bud Applebrug, and Judy Bernstein is above.
Okay.
I'm Tei-Ching Hsieh, Anton van Dalen, Molly Blyden, Pamela Sneed.
Oh, wonderful.
Alice Wilson, my mother. Anyway, so I turned 70 a few years ago, and I invited 70 people to come to this loft.
Oh, cool.
And then I never made it past the hall because there were too many people in the room. And people are coming and going, and so I'm saying hello and goodbye to people all night. I never made it in. My friend Amy Gilbert, who's also an artist, was doing the cooking, and I never made it to have any food.
Right. Well, look,
at my own dinner party.
I have to say, I love this idea. 70 guests at 70. I am stealing that one for posterity. I'm definitely going to do that. Maybe it'll be next. We'll meet 50 at 50 is going to be
Okay, 50
next,
for 50.
next up for me. But that also leads me on quite nicely to my next question. Well, firstly, thank you for sharing. We got a little bit of a curator's eye view of your apartment, your home there. So thank you so much. The next question actually follows on quite nicely because it's actually about a dinner party. And I was wondering if you were hosting a dinner party and you could invite, up to 5 guests. They can be dead or alive. They can be from any period in history. Who would you invite? So what 5 guests would you invite to that dinner party?
Lucy Lepard.
Okay.
Judy Bernstein.
Okay.
Robin Toos.
Okay, yeah.
Granite. Can they be dead? Diane Tour.
Absolutely.
Let's see, that's 4, right?
Yep.
I get one more.
Do it.
I'll go for Joan Semmel.
Okay. That sounds like a fun time. I get an automatic invitation as I post a question, so I'll be sat around the table as well, so I can help you.
Okay, great.
And then the next question I wanted to ask was about galleries, and I'm sure you visited plenty of those in your life, but I was just wondering, is there any particular gallery anywhere in the world that you like to revisit?
Revisit.
Yeah, you like to go back. Say anytime you're in a particular city, you would always go to that gallery.
Well, maybe this is the moment I should tell my story about how I got into PPOW Gallery.
Sure.
So Wendy Alsop, who's the co-owner with Penny Pilkington of PPOW, bought a work out of my first solo show in New York, Mitchell August Gallery. It was, I make up the image of my perfection, I make up the image of my deformity. And then Mitchell took a partner and we moved, and things got complicated, and he wasn't clear about when he could give me another show. So I asked my feminist friends if I could approach Wendy. They said, yeah, you have no contract. There's no reason why you can't speak with Wendy, who bought your work. So Wendy came over and looked at all the new work that I had done. And she said, I don't know why we didn't ask you before. So now I'm in PPOW Gallery. And, it's not the question that you asked, like what galleries I visit, but I always visit PPOW when I go into Manhattan.
And can I just ask, for anyone out there who doesn't know where it is, where would people find it?
Now it is located below Canal Street on Broadway,
right,
in Tribeca. They started in the East Village, and then they moved to Soho, then they moved to Chelsea, and now they're in Tribeca.
Yeah, and there's plenty of other good little galleries and places.
Oh, indeed. Everybody's moving to Tribeca because that's where the hedge fund guys live now.
Yeah, so we've got to tap them up on the way to work. Yeah, no, I get it. Well, moving on to another question, I wanted to ask, we're a publishing company, so I wanted to ask what book, could be fiction, non-fiction, what book had the greatest impact on you?
It's a wonderful question. I'm reading a book that was recommended by my son's wife, and it's called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It's by Rebecca Skloot. And it's about a woman who had cervical cancer, and her cells were preserved after she died. And so cell culture is probably Henrietta. If you go to the doctor and the doctor wants to culture the cells in your throat or something, you have to have a culture to work with. It's going to be Henrietta.
Oh, wow. Okay. Right. I get it. Okay. Wow. That's fascinating. All right. And my last question for today, what's your favorite thing to do on a lazy Sunday?
Read books.
The correct answer always, of course. I think read books, go to galleries, go to concerts. Go to
theater and performance art. Sure.
Yeah, and I think thankfully I was able to do all of those things yesterday, so I feel truly revived after a weekend of culture for sure. Well, look, that's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Martha Wilson. It's been such a pleasure and honor to have you on the In Conversation podcast today. Been great talking a bit about your own work and, of course, about the founding of Franklin Furnace, which will be celebrating its 50th anniversary next year. So do watch this space. Take a look at Franklin Furnace online. Lots of information there. Also take a look at Martha Wilson online, of course, and then take a look for that Franklin Furnace book by Tony Sand, published by Intellect Books, Franklin Furnace in the Spirit of the Avant-Garde. And of course, Last Artist Standing, Living and Sustaining a Creative Life by Sharon Louden, which includes a contribution from Martha Wilson, is now available from all good bookshops and, of course, online from www.intellectbooks.com and the University of Chicago Press. But Martha, that's it from me. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful having you on. And thank you to everyone who's listened. We'll see you for the next episode of In Conversation. Thank you and goodbye.